Welcome to Listen and Learn English. In this story, you will listen to a quiet and heartfelt journey. It is about a man who lives far from his old home and remembers the life he once knew. There is no lesson to learn and no message to follow. This story is only for listening, reading, and feeling the English language naturally. Take your time. Listen carefully. Let the words move slowly. Now let the story begin. Chapter 1. The New City. The man lived in a small room on the fourth floor of an old building. The room was clean, but it did not feel warm. The walls were white, and the window was narrow. When he stood near the window, he could see many buildings, all close together. They looked tall and serious, like they were watching him. Every morning he woke up before the sun was high. He did not need an alarm. His body remembered old habits. He sat on the edge of the bed for a moment and listened. There were sounds, but they were not familiar sounds. Cars moved quickly on the street below. Someone closed a door loudly. A dog barked once and then stopped. He missed the sounds of his old home. In his old home, mornings were softer. He could hear birds. He could hear people talking far away. Sometimes he heard the sound of a broom cleaning the street. Those sounds were gentle. They did not rush. Here, in this new city, everything seemed to move too fast. The man washed his face in the small bathroom. The mirror was old and the light was weak. He looked at his face. It was the same face, but it felt different in this place. His hair had more gray now. His eyes looked tired but calm. He put on his jacket and left the room. The hallway smelled like dust and old paint. He walked down the stairs slowly. He always walked slowly. There was no reason to hurry. Outside, the city was already awake. People walked past him without looking. They held phones, bags, cups of coffee. Everyone seemed busy with their own lives. No one noticed him, and he did not expect them to. He walked to a small cafe near the corner. He had been there many times. The woman at the counter knew his face, but not his name. She nodded when she saw him. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yes," he said. He sat by the window with his cup. The coffee was hot, but the taste was plain. It was not bad, but it was not special. In his old home, coffee tasted different. Maybe it was the water. Maybe it was the air. Or maybe it was the feeling of sitting in a place where he belonged. He watched people pass by outside. Some laughed. Some looked tired. Some talked loudly. He wondered where they were going and what they were thinking. Then his thoughts moved back to his old home, as they often did. His old home was not a big place. It was quiet. The streets were wide, and trees stood along the road. In the afternoon, the light fell softly on the houses. At night, the sky was dark, and the stars were clear. He remembered standing outside and looking up, feeling small but peaceful. Here, the sky was hidden by buildings. After finishing his coffee, he walked again. He did not have a clear plan. He often walked without a reason. Walking helped him think. It helped him remember. He passed a park. Children were playing, and parents were sitting on benches. He stopped for a moment and watched. The sound of children's laughter touched something inside him. It reminded him of a time when life felt closer and simpler. He sat on a bench at the edge of the park. The bench was cold. He placed his hands together and looked at the ground. Small leaves had fallen from nearby trees. Autumn was coming. He could feel it in the air. Autumn in his old home was his favorite season. He remembered walking through long streets covered with fallen leaves. The air was cool but not cold. People spoke softly. Everything felt slow and thoughtful. Those memories stayed with him, clear and strong, even after many years. The man stood up and continued walking. The day moved forward, but his heart stayed behind, in a place far away. He knew he could not return easily. Life had taken him in a different direction. Work, time, and responsibility had slowly pulled him away from the place he loved. Now, he lived here. The new city gave him a place to stay, food to eat, and work to do. But it did not give him the feeling of home. That feeling lived only in his memories. When evening came, he returned to his small room. He sat near the window again. Lights turned on in the buildings outside. The city became bright, but he felt quiet inside. He closed his eyes for a moment and imagined his old home. He imagined the street, the house, the familiar sounds. He did not smile, and he did not cry. He simply remembered. And that was how his life was now, living in one place, but belonging to another. Chapter 2. Morning without familiar sounds. Morning came quietly, but not gently. The light entered the room through the narrow window and touched the white wall. The man opened his eyes and lay still for a moment. He listened, as he always did. There were sounds, but they felt empty to him. A bus passed outside. Someone spoke loudly on the street. A door closed hard somewhere in the building. These sounds filled the air, but they did not stay in his heart. They came and went too quickly. In his old home, mornings sounded different. He remembered waking up to the soft sound of birds. Sometimes a rooster called from far away. Sometimes he heard footsteps on the street, slow and familiar. These sounds were part of his life. They told him that the day had begun and everything was in its place. Here, nothing felt in its place. He sat up and placed his feet on the floor. The floor was cold. He stood and walked to the small table near the window. On the table were a cup, a plate, and a kettle. Everything was clean, but nothing felt personal. He filled the kettle with water and turned it on. The sound of boiling water was sharp. He watched the steam rise and disappear. In his old home, someone else often boiled the water. He did not think about it then. Now he remembered it clearly. He poured the hot water into his cup and held it with both hands. The warmth felt good. He closed his eyes and took a small breath. For a moment, he imagined sitting in his old kitchen. The room was wider. The window was open. Morning air moved slowly inside. But when he opened his eyes, the small room returned. He drank his tea slowly. He always drank it slowly. Rushing made no sense. The city outside rushed enough for everyone. As he drank, he looked at the street below. People moved quickly. Some looked at their phones. Some talked without smiling. He wondered if they listened to the morning or if they only heard noise. In his old home, people listened more. After finishing his tea, he washed the cup and placed it back on the table. He folded his blanket and made the bed carefully. These small actions reminded him of his past. He used to do the same things every morning, but in a different place, with different sounds. Back then, he heard a radio playing softly from another room. Sometimes music filled the house. Sometimes news. Sometimes laughter followed the sound. Here, there was only silence after noise. He washed his face and looked at himself in the mirror again. Water touched his skin, and another memory came. He remembered washing his face outside, under the open sky. The air was cool. The smell of earth and plants surrounded him. Now the bathroom smelled like soap and old walls. He put on his clothes and sat down to tie his shoes. As he bent forward, His hand touched the floor. It felt smooth and hard. In his old home, the floor was rough. It was not perfect, but it felt alive. He stood up and took his jacket. Before leaving, he paused near the door. This pause had become part of his routine. He did not know why he did it. Maybe he was waiting for a sound that never came. He did not hear a familiar voice calling his name. He did not hear a neighbor greeting him. He did not hear the quiet comfort of home. Only the city waited for him. He opened the door and stepped outside. The hallway was already loud. Footsteps moved quickly up and down the stairs. Someone spoke on the phone. Someone laughed loudly. The man walked down slowly. Outside, the morning continued without him. The sun was higher now. The air was colder. He pulled his jacket closer and walked forward. Each step took him further into the present, but his heart stayed in the past, listening for sounds that no longer existed. Chapter 3. The Old Photograph. That evening, the man returned to his room earlier than usual. The city outside was loud, but his room felt quiet. He placed his jacket on the chair and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long moment, he did nothing. Then he opened the small drawer under the table. Inside were only a few things: a notebook, a pen, some old papers. At the bottom of the drawer, under everything else, was a photograph. He took it out carefully, as if it could break. The photograph was old. The edges were soft and a little yellow. It had been folded once, long ago, and the line in the middle never disappeared. He held it with both hands and looked at it closely. In the photograph, there was a house. It was not a big house. It had one floor and a wide roof. The walls were light in color, and the paint was not new, even in the picture. In front of the house, there was a small yard. The ground was uneven, and a few plants grew near the wall. He could see the front door clearly. It was wooden and dark, with marks from many years of use. He remembered how the door sounded when it opened. It never opened quietly. It always made a small noise, like a greeting. Near the door, a window faced the street. The window was open in the photograph. Thin curtains moved gently, frozen in time. He remembered standing behind those curtains, looking outside, watching people pass. To the left of the house, there was a tree. The tree was tall and full of leaves. In the photograph, its shadow fell across the yard. He remembered sitting under that tree on warm days. The air smelled different there. It smelled like earth, leaves, and sun. In front of the house, several people stood together. They were close, not in a perfect line, but naturally close. Some were smiling. Some were not. Their faces were clear to him, even after all these years. He saw himself in the photograph. He was younger. His hair was darker. His face was thinner. He stood slightly apart, but still close enough to belong. His expression was calm. He was not thinking about the future then. He was only there. Beside him stood someone shorter, wearing simple clothes. Their face held a quiet smile. Their eyes looked relaxed, like they had nowhere else to go. The man remembered how those eyes used to look at him, without hurry, without questions. Another person stood near the door, one hand resting on the wooden frame. They looked strong in the photograph. Their back was straight. Their face showed years of work, but also pride. The man remembered how that hand often opened the door in the morning and closed it at night. There were others, too. Faces that once filled his days. Faces that spoke his language, shared his silence, understood his pauses. He did not name them in his mind. He did not need to. The photograph also showed the street in front of the house. It was wide and quiet. No cars appeared in the picture, only empty space and light. He remembered walking on that street early in the morning, when the world still felt asleep. The sky in the photograph was bright. There were no tall buildings. Nothing blocked the light. He remembered how the sky looked different every hour. Blue in the morning, soft and pale in the afternoon, deep and dark at night. He lowered the photograph slightly and looked around his room. The walls were close. The ceiling was low. The window was narrow. Outside, only buildings and lights existed. He could not see the sky clearly from here. He raised the photograph again. In the corner of the picture, he noticed something small. A chair stood near the wall of the house. The chair looked old, even then. He remembered sitting on it in the evening, watching the street grow quiet. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he stayed silent. Both felt right. His fingers touched the surface of the photograph. He traced the shape of the house slowly. His finger moved from the roof to the door, from the door to the tree. Each movement brought another image into his mind. The smell of the air, the sound of footsteps on the street, the feeling of time moving slowly. The photograph did not change. It stayed still, holding everything exactly as it was. He wondered how the house looked now. He wondered if the tree was still there. He wondered if the chair still stood near the wall, or if it had finally broken. He did not search for answers. He placed the photograph on the table, leaning it against the wall. It faced the bed. He'd like to see it there. It made the room feel less empty. The light outside grew weaker. Evening came. The city lights turned on, one by one. Their reflection touched the photograph slightly, but did not enter it. The man lay down on the bed and looked at the picture again. Nothing moved in the photograph. No one spoke. Nothing changed. And yet, everything in it felt alive. Chapter 4. Walking the Streets. The next morning, the man left his room without a clear reason. He did not need to go anywhere special. Walking itself had become part of his life. It helped him pass time, and it helped him stay close to his thoughts. The street outside was already busy. People moved in many directions. Some walked fast, some slowly, but everyone seemed to know where they were going. Cars filled the road. Buses stopped and started again. The sound of the city rose and fell like a wave. The man walked among them, but he did not feel part of them. He moved at his own pace, slower than most. People passed him on both sides. No one looked at him for long. Faces appeared and disappeared quickly, like pictures changing too fast to remember. Even in the crowd, he felt alone. He walked past shops with bright windows. Clothes hung behind glass. Lights reflected on the street. Music played from inside one store, loud and sharp. He paused for a moment, then continued walking. In his old home, shops were smaller. Owners stood near the door. Sometimes they spoke to people passing by. Sometimes they only nodded. Even silence felt shared. Here, silence felt separate. He crossed a wide road when the light turned green. Cars stopped, waiting. He stood in the middle of the street for a brief moment and looked around. Tall buildings surrounded him. Their windows reflected the sky, but the sky felt far away. He remembered walking through his hometown streets many years ago. Those streets were not crowded, but they were never empty. People moved slowly. Someone always recognized him. Someone always spoke his name. Even when he walked alone, He felt connected to the place around him. He remembered the sound of his footsteps on familiar ground. The road was uneven. Some stones were loose. He knew where to step without thinking. Here, the ground was smooth and hard. His steps made no sound. He turned onto a smaller street. It was quieter, but still busy. Cafes lined the road. People sat outside, talking and laughing. Cups touched tables. Chairs moved. Life happened close to him, but not with him. He walked past them without stopping. In his hometown, sitting outside meant noticing everything: the sky, the trees, the slow movement of time. Conversations did not rush. Words had space between them. Here, words fell quickly and disappeared. The man continued walking. His legs moved forward, but his thoughts moved backward. Memory followed memory, like footsteps that never reached the present. He passed a narrow alley and stopped briefly. The alley was empty. No one walked there. Trash bins stood against the wall. The space felt forgotten. For a moment, he liked it. It reminded him of small paths near his old home. Paths people used only sometimes. Paths that felt private and quiet. He remembered walking there in the late afternoon when the sun was low and shadows grew long. He stepped into the alley and walked a few meters. The air was cooler. The noise of the city softened. He closed his eyes for a second, but when he opened them, the walls were too close. The smell was wrong. The ground was wet. The feeling passed. He turned back. As he returned to the main street, the noise came back immediately. Cars moved. People talked. A siren sounded far away. He felt tired, though he had not walked far. He found a bench near a busy crossing and sat down. People stood nearby, waiting for the light to change. They stood close, but no one spoke. Everyone faced forward, watching the signal. The man watched them. In his hometown, people waited together. They talked while waiting. They shared small stories. Even silence felt friendly. Here, waiting felt empty. The light changed. People crossed the street quickly. The bench beside him became empty. He stayed seated. He looked at his hands. They rested quietly on his knees. These hands had worked, held, built, and carried. They had touched familiar walls, opened familiar doors, and greeted familiar people. Now they touched nothing that belonged to him. After a while, he stood and continued walking. The sun began to move lower in the sky. Light changed color. Shadows grew longer between buildings. This part of the day always reminded him of home. In his hometown, evening walks were slow and peaceful. The heat faded. People returned home. The street softened. The world felt gentle. Here, evening only meant more lights. As he walked back toward his building, the street felt just as full as before. People still hurried. Cars still moved. Life continued without noticing him. He entered his building and climbed the stairs slowly. Each step felt heavy, not in his body, but in his heart. Inside his room, he closed the door quietly. The city remained outside, moving and breathing. And the man stood still, a stranger among many, walking through streets that never truly saw him. Chapter 5. Food that tastes different. That evening, the man felt hunger, but not strongly. Hunger came quietly to him now, like many other things in his life. It did not rush. It waited. He put on his jacket and walked down the stairs. Outside, the air was cool. Lights from shops reflected on the street. The smell of food moved through the air. Fried oil, bread, spices he did not know well. He walked slowly, letting the smells pass him. He stopped near a small restaurant. The window was bright. Inside, people sat close together at small tables. Their voices mixed with the sound of plates and glasses. Someone laughed loudly. Someone called for more food. The man looked through the glass for a moment, then walked on. He did not feel like sitting among many people. A little further down the street, he found a quiet place that sold simple food. There were only a few tables inside. The light was soft. No music played. It felt calm enough. He entered and sat near the wall. A young man came and placed a menu on the table. The man looked at it carefully. The words were clear, but the food felt unfamiliar. He read slowly, even though he already knew what he would choose. "Just this," he said, pointing. The young man nodded and walked away. The man sat alone and waited. As he waited, his thoughts moved again, without asking permission. Waiting always gave his memories space to return. In his old home, eating was never rushed. Food came with time, and time came with food. He remembered sitting at a wooden table that showed marks from many years of use. The table was not beautiful, but it felt strong and honest. He remembered the smell of cooking filling the house long before the food was ready. The sound of oil heating slowly, the soft noise of vegetables being cut, the quiet movement of someone working in the kitchen. Those sounds told him that food was coming. They told him that someone cared. Here, food came silently. The plate arrived. Steam rose gently. The smell was warm and clean. It was not unpleasant. It was just different. He picked up his spoon and tasted the food. The first bite was hot. The flavor was simple. It filled his mouth, but not his heart. He ate slowly, as always, giving each bite its own time. As he ate, another memory appeared. He remembered the taste of food from his old home. It was not always perfect. Sometimes it was too salty. Sometimes it was too plain. But it always carried something more than taste. It carried hands he knew. It carried voices he trusted. It carried moments that stayed. He remembered sitting quietly while someone placed food in front of him. No words were needed. The food spoke enough. Here, no one spoke. He ate halfway and paused. He looked at the plate. The food looked the same as before. Nothing had changed, but something was missing. He took another bite and closed his eyes for a moment. He tried to imagine the old flavors. He tried to remember how spices smelled when they mixed together slowly, how steam touched his face in a warm kitchen, how the air felt heavy and comforting at the same time. The memory was clear, but the taste was not. He opened his eyes again. People at other tables talked softly. Their words stayed separate from him. They lived in their own spaces, their own meals, their own lives. He finished eating without hurry. When the plate was empty, he felt full but not satisfied. He paid and stood up. Outside, the night had grown deeper. The street was darker now. The smell of food still moved through the air, but it no longer reached him. As he walked back, his steps were slow. The feeling of the meal stayed with him, light and quiet. In his old home, the smell of food followed him even after eating. It stayed in his clothes, in his hair, in the air of the house. It stayed long after the plates were empty. Here, the smell disappeared quickly. Back in his room, he took off his jacket and sat near the window. He could see lights from nearby buildings. Somewhere, someone was cooking. The smell did not reach him. He drank some water and sat quietly. His stomach was full, but his heart remembered something else. It remembered evenings filled with familiar smells and gentle sounds. It remembered meals that did not need words. The man leaned back and closed his eyes. Taste faded. Smell faded. But memory remained. And in that quiet room, surrounded by a city that never slept, he missed the simple warmth of food that once felt like home. Chapter 6. A Familiar Voice. The next afternoon, the man went out again. The sky was gray, and the air felt heavy. He did not carry an umbrella. He did not think it would rain much. He walked without direction, letting the streets decide for him. After some time, he stopped near a small market. People moved in and out of the building, carrying bags filled with food and daily needs. The doors opened and closed again and again. Voices mixed together, loud and fast. He stood near the entrance, watching. Then he heard it. It was not loud. It did not call his name. It did not stand out to anyone else. But to him, it felt clear and close. A voice. The words were simple, but the sound was familiar. The accent moved in a way he had not heard in a long time. It was soft in some places, strong in others. It carried a rhythm his ears remembered before his mind did. He turned his head slowly. A man stood a few steps away, speaking to the shop owner. He was about the same age. His clothes were plain. His face looked tired, but calm. He spoke again, and the sound reached the man's heart immediately. For a moment, the street around them disappeared. The man felt his body grow still. His hands rested at his sides. His breath slowed. That voice came from home. Not this home, the other one. The man did not think. He did not plan. His feet moved before his thoughts caught up. He stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said quietly. The other man turned and looked at him. Their eyes met for the first time. The voice spoke again, slower now. "Yes?" The sound was real. It was not memory. "You're from—" The man paused, searching for the right word. "From there, aren't you?" The other man's face changed slightly. Not surprise, but recognition. "Yes," he said. "I am." They stood there for a second, looking at each other. People passed behind them. A car honked. The market door opened again. But between them, time felt different. "It's been a long time," the man said. The other man nodded. "A very long time." They did not say the name of the place. They did not need to. It lived clearly between them. "How long have you been here?" the other man asked. "Many years," the man replied. "You?" "Only 2, the other man said. "It still feels strange." The man understood that feeling well. He did not explain it. He simply nodded. They stood quietly for a moment. Silence felt easy between them. Then the other man smiled, small and careful. "Well," he said, "I should go. My family's waiting." The word family stayed in the air. "Yes," the man said. "Of course." The other man reached out his hand. The man took it. The handshake was firm, warm, and brief. "It was good to hear a familiar voice," the other man said. The man smiled slightly. "Yes, it was." The other man turned and walked away, joining the crowd. Within seconds, he disappeared among other faces, other voices, other lives. The street returned to its normal sound. The man stayed where he was. The moment was over, but something inside him had changed. His chest felt tight, but warm at the same time. His heart beat a little faster, then slowly returned to its usual rhythm. He did not follow. He did not look back. He walked forward instead. As he moved through the street, the voice stayed with him. It followed him quietly, like an echo that did not want to fade. It reminded him that his past was real, that it still lived somewhere, inside people, inside sound. He passed familiar places again, shops, corners, crossings, but everything felt different now. Not better, not worse, just closer. By the time he reached his building, the sky had grown darker. A light rain began to fall. Small drops touched his jacket and face. He did not hurry. Inside his room, he sat down and removed his shoes. The room felt the same as before. Small, quiet, still. But his thoughts were not. He heard the voice again in his mind. The accent, the rhythm, the simple words. It did not bring answers. It did not bring solutions. It brought connection. Short, gentle, gone. The man sat near the window and looked outside. Rain moved down the glass in thin lines. The city continued without pause. He knew he would not hear that voice again. But he also knew something else. Some sounds never truly leave. They wait quietly until the heart is ready to hear them again. Chapter 7. The Rain. The rain did not begin suddenly. It arrived slowly, like a thought that takes time to form. At first, the man heard only a few drops touching the window. They made soft sounds, easy to miss. He sat near the glass and listened. The city did not stop. Cars still moved. People still walked. But the rain changed the way everything sounded. Noise softened. Sharp edges disappeared. The air felt heavier, calmer. He watched the rain fall. Drops slid down the window in thin lines. Some moved fast, some moved slowly. They met, joined together, and then fell out of sight. He followed them with his eyes, without thinking about where they went. Rain always made him stop. In his old home, rain was familiar and welcome. It did not rush. It did not surprise anyone. People expected it. They watched the sky and felt it coming before the first drop touched the ground. He remembered the smell of rain from his old home. The earth opened itself. Dust disappeared. The air became clean and deep. Rain touched trees, roofs, and roads, and everything felt renewed. Here, rain felt colder. He stood and put on his jacket. He did not open an umbrella. He wanted to feel the rain, even if it was different. Outside, the street looked softer. Lights reflected on wet ground. Footsteps sounded dull and quiet. People moved faster now, trying to escape the rain. The man did not hurry. He walked slowly, letting drops touch his face and hands. The rain felt light, but steady. It soaked into his jacket little by little. He stopped near a small shelter at the corner of the street and stood there, watching. Rain fell from the sky without care. It touched everyone equally, rich or poor, young or old. It did not choose. This thought made him feel calm. He remembered standing in the rain long ago near his old home. He remembered wet ground under his feet and water running along the street. Children played and laughed. Adults watched quietly. No one complained. Rain was part of life. He watched a car pass by, water rising from its wheels. He watched people run past him, their faces tight, their steps quick. He stayed still. Waiting had become natural to him. As he waited, memories came without effort. He remembered sitting under a wide roof, watching rain fall in his old home. Water dropped from the edge of the roof in a steady rhythm. He remembered the sound clearly. It was soft, regular, comforting. Here, rain fell against glass and concrete. The sound was sharper. Still, it reminded him of home. He closed his eyes and listened. For a moment, the city faded. He heard rain touching leaves. He heard water meeting earth. He heard quiet voices inside a house, protected from the weather. He opened his eyes again. The street returned. A woman stood near him under the shelter. She held a bag close to her body. She looked at the rain, then at her watch. She sighed softly. The man did not speak. Rain fell between them, filling the silence. After a while, the rain grew stronger. Drops fell faster. The ground darkened. Small rivers formed along the side of the road. He stepped forward, out of the shelter, and let the rain touch him fully. Cold water ran down his face. It moved into his hair, down his neck. He did not pull away. In his old home, rain was warmer. It carried a different feeling. But rain was still rain. It still slowed the world. He walked again, slowly, watching water move along the street. Leaves stuck to the ground. Reflections changed with every step. He remembered walking home in the rain many years ago. His clothes were wet. His shoes were heavy. But his heart felt light. Someone waited for him. A warm place waited. Here, no one waited. That thought came quietly, without pain. The man reached his building and stopped at the door. He looked back at the street one last time. Rain continued its steady fall. He stood there longer than necessary. When he finally went inside, the hallway felt dry and empty. The sound of rain stayed outside. In his room, he removed his wet jacket and placed it on the chair. Drops fell onto the floor. He sat near the window again. Rain covered the glass completely now. The world outside blurred and softened. Shapes lost their edges. Everything felt distant. He liked it that way. Rain created a space where nothing demanded his attention. It allowed him to remember without pressure. It allowed him to be still. The man rested his head against the wall and watched the rain until the sky grew darker. He did not think about tomorrow. He did not think about the past too deeply. He simply existed in the moment. And as rain continued to fall, quietly and endlessly, he felt closer to the place he still called home. Chapter 8. Night Thoughts. Night arrived without sound. The rain had stopped, and the city felt tired. Lights shone from windows across the street, steady and distant. The man sat on his bed and listened to the quiet. Night was the hardest time. During the day, movement helped him. Walking, watching, waiting. These things filled the space. But at night, nothing moved inside him except thoughts. He turned off the main light and left only the small lamp near the table. The room grew soft and shadowed. He lay down slowly and rested his head on the pillow. Sleep did not come. He stared at the ceiling and breathed slowly. Outside, a car passed and then disappeared. After that, nothing disturbed the silence. His memories returned, stronger now. At night, they did not ask permission. He thought of his old home. Not just the house, but the feeling of being known, of belonging somewhere without effort. He remembered sitting quietly in the evening, hearing familiar sounds through open windows, a voice calling from another room, footsteps moving gently nearby, the low sound of conversation. Those sounds were gone, but they lived clearly in his mind. He turned onto his side and closed his eyes. Faces appeared. Faces he had not seen in years. Faces that once filled his days. Some were smiling. Some looked serious. Some looked tired, like they had lived long lives. He remembered moments he had not thought about for a long time. A conversation that ended too quickly. A goodbye that felt unfinished. A silence that lasted longer than it should have. Regret came quietly. It was not loud or painful. It did not accuse him. It simply sat beside him, calm and heavy. He wondered what would have happened if he had stayed, if he had chosen differently, if he had spoken more or stayed silent less. He did not search for answers. Love appeared next, not the kind that demands or hurts, but the kind that stays even when everything else changes. Love for a place, love for people, love for moments that can never return. He remembered caring without fear, trusting without question. believing that time would always move slowly. Now, time moved differently. He opened his eyes and looked around the room. Everything felt small at night. The walls seemed closer. The air felt still. He sat up and reached for the photograph on the table. The lamp's soft light touched it gently. He picked it up and held it close. In the quiet of the night, the photograph felt heavier. He looked at each face again. He noticed small details he had forgotten. A hand resting on a shoulder. A slight smile that almost disappeared. He wondered if they thought of him at night too. The thought did not bring comfort or pain. It simply existed. He placed the photograph back on the table and lay down again. His thoughts moved slowly now, like water after rain. He thought about words left unsaid. Sometimes he had wanted to speak, but stayed silent. Sometimes he had spoken, but not clearly enough. Those moments returned now, asking nothing, reminding him of their existence. The man sighed softly. He was not unhappy, but he was not complete. The night grew deeper. The city outside grew quieter. Even the lights across the street turned off one by one. He closed his eyes again. In the darkness, memories and feelings mixed together. Regret softened. Love remained. Unfinished thoughts stayed unfinished. He accepted them without struggle. Some things are not meant to be finished. Some feelings are not meant to leave. They stay, quietly shaping the heart. The man lay still and listened to his own breathing. Each breath moved in and out, steady and calm. Slowly, sleep moved closer. Before sleep took him, one final thought appeared. He had left his old home, but it had never left him. And in the quiet of the night, that thought felt enough. Chapter 9. A Small Object. The next morning, the man woke later than usual. The night had been long, and sleep had come slowly. Light entered the room gently, without hurry. He sat up and looked around. The room felt unchanged, but his thoughts felt calmer. He stood and walked toward the table near the window. As he moved, his eyes fell on the small shelf above the desk. He did not often look at it. Only a few things rested there, placed carefully, each with its own quiet purpose. He reached for a small object at the corner of the shelf. It was a book. The book was thin and old. Its cover was soft from years of use. The color had faded, and the edges were worn. Some pages inside were bent, and one corner had a small tear. He held it gently, like something fragile. This book had come from his old home. He remembered the day he received it. It was not a special day. No celebration. No reason. Someone had simply handed it to him and said, "You may like this." At that time, he did not understand how much it would stay with him. He sat down on the chair and placed the book on his lap. He opened it slowly. The pages made a soft sound as they moved. The smell of the paper reached him. Old paper carried its own scent. It was dry, quiet, and familiar. That smell alone brought back a place, a time, a feeling. Inside the book, the words were simple. The sentences were short. The story moved slowly. He had read it many times before, always in moments of quiet. He remembered reading it in his old home, sitting near an open window. Light moved across the page as the sun changed position. Sometimes someone walked past him and paused, reading a line or two over his shoulder. He turned a page. There were marks in the book. Small lines under certain sentences. A folded corner. A faint note written in the side. He had made those marks long ago without thinking. Now they felt important. Each mark was a moment. He remembered the chair he used to sit on while reading. It was not comfortable, but it felt right. He remembered the sound of pages turning while the world outside stayed calm. Here, the world was never calm. He closed the book and held it against his chest. The cover felt warm under his hand. This small object had traveled far with him, through moves, through changes, through years. He had carried many things in his life, but this book had stayed. He wondered why. It was not valuable. It was not rare. Anyone could find a copy. And yet, this one mattered more than any other, because it remembered him. The book remembered the hands that held it before, the places where it was opened, the silence it shared. He stood and walked back to the shelf. Before placing the book down, he hesitated. Then he took it with him to the bed. He sat again and opened it once more. He did not read the words. He simply looked at the page. The letters rested quietly, waiting. In his old home, reading was never about finishing a book. It was about being present, about letting time slow down. He realized that this book carried that feeling. He closed it and smiled, just slightly. This small object connected him to a place that no longer existed in front of him, but still lived inside him. It did not speak. It did not ask questions. It simply stayed. He placed the book beside his pillow. For the rest of the morning, he moved slowly around the room. He made tea. He washed the cup. He looked outside. The book stayed where it was, close, like a quiet companion. As he prepared to leave, he picked it up again and placed it carefully back on the shelf. He made sure it rested safely. Some things do not need to be used every day to matter. As he stepped out of the room, he glanced back once more. The shelf looked the same as always, but the space felt fuller now. The man walked down the stairs and into the city. The city did not know about his book. It did not know about his memories. It did not need to. The small object had done its work. It reminded him that even far from home, something true had stayed with him all along. Chapter 10. The Long Letter. That evening, the man stayed in his room. The sky outside was clear, and the city lights shone brightly. He did not feel the need to walk. Something inside him felt ready to sit still. He turned on the small lamp and sat at the table near the window. The notebook lay closed in front of him. It had been there for a long time, waiting. He opened it slowly. The pages were mostly empty. Only a few lines filled the first page. Words he had written long ago, without finishing the thought. He read them once and then turned to a new page. He picked up the pen and held it in his hand. For a moment, he did not write. Writing felt different from thinking. Thoughts could stay unfinished. Words on paper felt more serious. They stayed where they were placed. Finally, he began. He did not start with a greeting. He did not write a name. He simply wrote the first words that came to him. I am living in a different place now. The words looked small on the page. He paused, then continued. The city is large. The streets are full. People move quickly. He stopped again and looked at the window. Outside, lights reflected on glass. Someone passed below, their shadow moving across the street. He returned to the page. I think about home often. He wrote slowly, letting each word find its place. He did not search for beautiful sentences. He chose simple words, words that felt honest. I remember the house, the street, the tree near the door. As he wrote, the room felt quieter. The sound of the pen touching paper filled the space gently. He wrote about mornings, about rain, about food that tasted different, about a familiar voice heard only once. He did not explain his feelings. He did not ask questions. He simply described. Sometimes he stopped and rested the pen on the table. His hand felt tired, but calm. The letter grew longer. He wrote about missing small things, the sound of footsteps, the smell of the air after rain, the way time used to move more slowly. He did not say he was unhappy. He did not say he wanted to return. He only wrote what was true. As the page filled, he turned to the next one. The letter continued without effort now. The words came easily, as if they had waited for this moment. He wrote until his hand slowed. The pen felt heavy. His eyes felt tired. He stopped and leaned back in the chair. The letter rested open on the table. He read it once, from beginning to end. The words did not ask for anything. They did not demand a reply. They simply existed. He wondered who the letter was for. It did not matter. He folded the notebook and placed the pen beside it. The letter remained inside, hidden between pages. He did not prepare an envelope. He did not write an address. He did not think about sending it. Some letters are not meant to travel. They are meant to stay close. He turned off the lamp and stood by the window. The city continued to glow outside. Cars moved. Voices rose and fell. He felt lighter now, not because anything had changed, but because something had been released. The letter had taken a part of him and placed it safely on paper. He lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. The words remained in the notebook, quiet and patient. They did not wait for a response, and that was enough. Chapter 11. Returning in Memory. That night, sleep came more easily. The man lay still, his body relaxed, his breathing slow. The city outside was quiet now, resting for a few hours before morning. In this calm space, his mind began to move. He did not force it. He did not guide it. Memory opened its door on its own. He found himself standing in front of his old home. Not the way it looked in the photograph, but the way it felt. The air was warm. The ground beneath his feet was familiar. He did not need to look down to know where he stood. He walked forward. The front gate was there, just as he remembered. It made a soft sound when he pushed it open. The sound felt comforting, like a quiet welcome. He stepped inside the yard. The yard was small, but open. The earth showed signs of many seasons. Some places were dry. Some were dark and rich. Plants grew where they wished, not in perfect lines. He walked slowly, feeling the space around him. The tree stood to one side, tall and patient. Its branches spread wide, creating shade. He remembered standing under it, looking up, watching leaves move with the wind. He reached out and touched the rough surface of the trunk. It felt real. He moved toward the house. The door stood in front of him, wooden and familiar. He placed his hand on it and pushed gently. It opened with the same small sound he remembered. Inside, the air felt different. It was quiet, but alive. He stepped into the first room. Light entered through the window, falling softly on the floor. He remembered sitting there during the day, doing nothing special, just being present. He walked deeper into the house. Each room appeared clearly. The place where meals were prepared. The corner where someone liked to sit quietly. The space near the window where he once stood, watching the street outside. He did not rush. He did not skip any part. He paused in the kitchen. The table stood in the center, solid and worn. He remembered placing his hands on it, feeling its surface, leaning against it while talking or waiting. He could almost smell the food that once filled the room. He closed his eyes briefly. The memory held. He continued walking. Down the short hallway, past walls that had seen many days and nights. He reached the room where he used to sleep. The bed stood in the same place. The window faced the same direction. He remembered lying there at night, listening to familiar sounds. The world felt close then, safe. Now that feeling wrapped around him again. He turned and walked back outside. The evening light filled the yard. Shadows stretched slowly across the ground. He stepped toward the street. The street opened wide before him. It was calm, no cars, no rush, only space and quiet movement. He walked along the road, feeling each step. He knew where the ground changed. He knew where the light fell differently in the afternoon. Houses stood on both sides, each with its own story. He did not enter them. He simply passed by, nodding to memory. He reached the place where the street turned. From there, he could see the longer road ahead. He remembered walking that way many times. Morning walks, evening walks, walks without reason. He stood still. Everything he had left behind gathered in this moment. The love, the regret, the comfort, the distance. None of it felt heavy. It felt complete. He realized then that this place had never disappeared. It had only moved. It lived in him. The memory began to soften, like light fading at the end of the day. The house grew quieter. The street grew distant, but the feeling stayed. The man opened his eyes. He was back in his room, lying on his bed. The ceiling looked the same as always. The city outside was still quiet. His heart felt full, but calm. He did not feel the need to return physically. He did not feel the need to change anything. He had returned in the only way that truly mattered. And that was enough. Chapter 12. A quiet acceptance. Morning returned in its usual way. Light entered the room softly without asking permission. The man opened his eyes and lay still for a moment, listening. Nothing special waited for him. And that felt right. He sat up slowly and looked around the room. The walls were the same. The table stood near the window. The photograph rested where he had placed it. The small shelf held the book quietly, unchanged. He stood and washed his face. The water felt cool and clear. He looked at himself in the mirror, not searching for anything, just looking. He noticed that his face looked calm. He dressed and made tea. The kettle boiled. Steam rose. He poured the water carefully and held the cup with both hands. The warmth moved into his fingers. He stood near the window and drank slowly. Outside, the city was already awake. People walked below. Cars moved along the street. The sounds were familiar now, not loved, not hated, simply known. He missed his old home. That feeling had not disappeared. It was there, steady and quiet, like something that lived inside him without pain. It did not pull him backward. It did not stop him from moving forward. It simply stayed. After finishing his tea, he placed the cup on the table and put on his jacket. He left the room and walked down the stairs at his usual pace. Outside, the air felt cool. The sky was clear. The street looked ordinary. He began to walk. His steps moved naturally, without thought. He passed the cafe where he sometimes sat, the park where children played, the streets he now recognized without effort. As he walked, he realized something gently, without surprise. This city had become part of his life. Not his heart, not his memories, but his days. He accepted that. He stopped near a crossing and waited for the light to change. People stood beside him, close but separate. No one spoke. No one needed to. The light changed, and he crossed with the others. He thought of his old home again. The house. the yard, the street, the sounds that once filled his mornings and nights. Those memories felt complete now. They did not ask him to return. They did not ask him to stay away. They simply existed. He walked to the edge of the park and sat on a bench. The bench felt familiar now, even though it had not always been. He rested his hands on his knees and watched the world move. Time passed. People came and went. Leaves moved slightly in the wind. A bird landed nearby, then flew away. Life continued. He did not feel the need to change anything. He did not feel the need to hold on or let go. He allowed things to be as they were. The man stood and continued walking. When evening came, he returned to his room. He turned on the lamp and sat quietly. He looked at the photograph once more, not with longing, but with calm recognition. That place would always be part of him. And this place, slowly, had become part of him too. He lay down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would come, and after that, another day. He would wake. He would walk. He would remember. And he would live, not with excitement, not with regret, but with quiet acceptance. And in that acceptance, he found peace. Thank you for listening. This story ends here, but the feeling may stay with you for a while. Take a moment to sit quietly and let the words settle. If you enjoyed listening, you can listen again. Each time, the English may feel a little more natural. This is Listen and Learn English. We share simple stories for calm listening and reading practice. Until next time, take care and keep listening.